Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a podcast for video game piss artists and real life lethargists.
Wow.
My name is Fazz.
That's never making a t-shirt, is it? And I'm Rich.
I thought that was okay.
All right.
Yeah.
No,
I feel like I'm trying to get away a little bit from the retro gaming podcast for retro gaming needs a little bit, just because I feel like in my mind coming up in the new year, like the first couple of months, like most of the games I'm playing are kind of going to be contemporary games, I would say. So
that's fair enough. Yeah.
I didn't want to, falsely advertise that we were a retro gaming podcast all the time.
Yeah.
But ironically, like the next couple of weeks, I think personally, anyway, quite old. So we'll go back. It's fine.
But apart from that,
indeed.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
I haven't seen you since you invited me over to play my first tabletop RPG dicey role-playing game.
Yeah.
Worldwide Wrestling.
How did that go for you?
I had a lot of fun.
That's good.
But as I said, I think over text since, I found it really hard. Which I guess you're not really not meant to. I don't know, but yeah. So
I don't know. Like the first time you play like literally anything like that, I could absolutely see why it would be difficult.
I just can't, like, my brain is just like, it just takes a lot to get in gear. So I mean, I guess just to invite the podcast listeners into our conversation, that would be useful, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So
bring them along for the ride.
So you purchased Worldwide Wrestling, so it's like a book and you get some cards with it, and you were like effectively the dungeon master, if you will, but
in a dungeon of wrestling.
Dungeon of wrestling, yeah. And yeah, so we all, I guess, created characters effectively, based on some presets, and yeah.
And away we went.
And I was really super impressed by your friend Michael and also our friend Hakers of the podcast previously. Seeing them do a back and forth, like an actual wrestling match,
good, wasn't it?
that you were like comparing, and you just doing such a great job between you guys, and I had just no idea what was really kind of going on, and I was really worried about kind of getting involved because I was like, this is too good. This quality of RPGing is far too good. So
it's when I first started, I found it very easy to overthink, and it's taken me a long time to feel comfortable just winging it. And I find the games much more enjoyable when I'm winging it in the extreme. So yeah, like it's no surprise when you've got a sheet full of stats and dice to roll and things to declare or track and all that kind of stuff. Like it's daunting stuff, and I think like being thrown in at the deep end and playing Dungeons and Dragons first has probably helped me personally, because that is more stats heavy. Yeah. But what's cool about it is that it's as stats heavy as you want it to be.
Yeah.
And by comparison, the Worldwide Wrestling was quite rules light, which is why it was even more freewheeling and chaotic. And I think really, if I was going to run it again, I don't know if I would have quite as many people there for the first session. It would almost have worked better as like two separate sessions, and then we bring everybody together at one point.
Did you feel like you needed a bit more control over that situation?
Not so much that. It's just that I think there were probably more questions around the table than we had time to cover or room to ask.
Okay.
So I think in the interests of getting people involved and learning the ropes a bit on a fundamental level of how to approach the notion of a tabletop RPG, I think a smaller group would have been a better shout in hindsight. But I learned a lot because I haven't run that game before. Yeah. So it was very interesting to see how it all actually shook out and all that kind of stuff. So.
Big recommendation from me, though. That is good. Absolutely. Even though I struggle with it, I think that's just a personal thing in terms of just being able to, like you say, feel comfortable in the environment of I can just make stuff up and try and stick
just do things.
You just didn't want to ruin it. I'm just one of those feelings that I didn't want to ruin anyone else's arc or story. So I was a bit like, when do you kind of get in?
Wouldn't worry about it.
It's really important to someone the next day. It's like, my fucking wrestling career, you ruined it.
I mean, I've been involved in sessions, at least for Dungeons and Dragons, where we've basically bickered for a good couple of hours before actually doing anything productive. And you get to the stage where it's just in character. Yeah. And your characters are bickering, and that's fine, because that is still role-playing. And that's where you kind of get to that little crossroad between it being a game and that kind of it's more of like an improvised storytelling framework thing. So yeah, like it takes some adjusting.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Cool. And something else that had happened recently, since we last really spoke on the podcast, was IGN. So it's been PlayStation's 30th anniversary, and I cannot fucking escape anybody putting and this speaks for people that listen to the podcast, like, fantastic supporters, just Scott Massey on Instagram, thank you very much, Scott, and but at the same time, every single person on Instagram, everybody has got a DualSense 30th anniversary PlayStation 5 controller. And it's just like, there's so many, and to think that I saw loads of posts when the sort of the PS5 limited edition was sort of coming out, and everyone's like, I can't get my hands on one, and now everyone's got their fucking hands on one. Like, I'm just like, wow. Like, so there's been a lot of PlayStation 30th anniversary things going on.
My favourite bit, like on the PS5, you've got like, at least at the moment for a limited time, different themes, and the startup is the original PS1 startup.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can't avoid that either.
Well, my wife didn't know that was going to happen, and I was there when she turned her PS5 on, and the original PS1 startup happened, and I was like, oh yeah, cute, and she was just like, the fuck is this? Because she never had a PS1 before, so it's like she has zero nostalgia for it, no warning. It's like suddenly she thinks like, what the fuck is up with my PlayStation? So had to gently explain what was going on. She was like, okay, right, I get that. But
it's definitely a cool thing to happen though. That is very clever. Just do it.
I think she could have done with some warning.
Why are my graphics all blocky? Like, is it
well, imagine if you get the PS2 one, and you're like, oh my god, it's broken.
Yeah. What, the red disc one, where it's like, oh yeah, it doesn't work, sorry.
Yeah.
Start ignoring your PS5, try and get it to work. So the one thing that I noted that the internet seems extremely divided about is the 30 sort of the best games of the last 30 years on PlayStation by IGN.
Right.
So I sort of gently pushed them onto Reddit a little bit, and they were shoved back down. Mostly because I noticed there was quite a lot of pushback about the fact that they're not all just PlayStation exclusive games, which I can see it from both sides. Like, as in, so I can understand that it's a PlayStation list, so therefore it should just be PlayStation games. But also at the same time, it's hard to ignore games that have become cross-platform behemoths, and you think, how well did that do on PlayStation itself? It's difficult for, I guess, a media outlet to maybe decipher that. I don't know.
Shy of doing two completely different lists, I guess. But yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I if I was going to fall on one side of the fence, I'd probably sort of try and say, if you could have done PlayStation exclusives only, that would have been cool. I think they probably just thought, we don't have 100 games that we're like super enamored with, that they, even though there'll be thousands out there that have just been on PlayStation and stuff, but it's probably just easier for them, I think, where it's just like to go, well, like Bloodborne was an easy one to do, for example. That was like sort of top 10, whereas for example, it's easy to do Grand Theft Auto 5, and it's like, so that will have shifted however many, probably hundreds of millions of units or something like that on the PlayStation alone. But I'd like to have not seen that in there as well. I would like to have been. So I understand why people are a bit pissed off with it. So
yeah, I get that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a list. Like,
yes,
you don't have to get pissed off about it.
You're right.
It's okay to disagree with it, and it's okay to think maybe you could have done it this way or you could have done it that way. But there's no point getting pissed off about it.
Yeah.
It's really not.
The amount of people that just get angry on the internet about things like The Gamer or IGN or basically anything that's like a big sort of network, like that has sort of any opinion whatsoever. Like if you have too strong an opinion, you're the devil. If you don't have an opinion, you're a laughing stock. And it's just like,
you can't win.
Yeah, when you get to a certain size of conglomerate, and I've seen recently, like for example, a lot of the Indiana Jones, The Great Circle reviews, and I think IGN gave it a 9 out of 10. And then immediately the first comment was like, well, it's going to be shit if IGN give it 9. And it's just like, what? It's like, how cynical is your life that you just sort of like, yeah, well, that's definitely how that's going to be the case. Like,
go outside and get a real problem, friend.
Yeah. But we have got this week then, as we are video game piss artists.
Yep. Sticking with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If anyone doesn't know what a piss, do you know what you know what a piss artist is, but do you know what the definition of a piss artist is?
Oh, I don't know about a definition. God, are you going to dictionarise me?
Well, the reason that I kind of put that in as a potential tagline was that it actually represents us pretty well. That it is people. It's meant to be a person that just messes around with something, and I certainly see myself as someone that just kind of messes around with video games. So I thought it kind of, was all right.
It kind of fits. Yeah, maybe we should put it on a T-shirt. Let's get in touch if you're interested in a piss artist T-shirt.
So yeah, we've played some exclusive PlayStation games, and a couple of both these series, were on the list. Not specifically my game, but certainly a game from the series was on the list. So I've played Patapon this week. So my first time actually playing it on the PSP. Have you played it before?
I don't think I have to any great extent. I might have played a demo or something.
Okay, yeah.
But I remember little black shapes, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's you've remembered well. That's something that happens. And weirdly enough, I saw that Patapon 3 was actually in the IGN Top 100 list. But when I kind of scouted around the internet for mostly kind of Metacritic reviews and things like that, it seemed as though a lot of people don't like that one. So that's probably why a list annoys people. Where it's like that's the worst one. But so it was interesting because I've only played the first one. I've heard good things about first one, the second one, the third one a little bit more. Sort of people are a bit more mild weather. Mild weather.
What does that mean? We're doing definitions.
Put that on a tagline.
Let us know if you want a mild weather T-shirt.
Lukewarm. That's what I meant. Mild weather and lukewarm are definitely the same thing, right?
No.
They are two contestants from Dead or Alive Paradise. That's who they are. Lukewarm versus mild weather.
Playing too many wrestling tabletop RPGs, that's the thing.
Make note of name for next time. Tag team partner. And you have played
Tearaway.
Ah, cool. Good.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting that at all. What? How could I design a mild weather T-shirt? You could have piss artist. I'll have mild weather. We'd be well aware.
No, yeah, it'd be awesome. Sorry, I did just go like that was a real hard cut. And you've played. Go now. Tearaway. Tearaway. PS Vita 2013.
Yep.
So yeah, cool. And that was on the list of that. I think that was probably 80th or something. So done pretty well to be in the top 100 PlayStation games. These series, if you will.
Well, especially as it never really got a sequel or anything. It kind of got a PS4 version that was quite different, but I'll get to that.
Okay, cool. I'll be interested to hear about that actually.
It's alright. I haven't got that much to say about it. I've basically covered it.
Well,
it was quite different.
So shall I go first?
Yeah,
just chronologically.
Go for it.
Cool. So Patapon. 2007 sort of / 2008, depending where you were in the world. PSP exclusive. So it's from Sony's in-house development team, Japan studio. I was so... I thought, again, as I always say, you do a little bit of research for the podcast, you have a little bit of a sort of dive into developers and things like that. And it was just so interesting to see, whilst they've got people developing for them, that's the sort of the publishing house of... Studio Japan. These are the games that have kind of come out from it. Ape Escape series, Loco Roco, one of my favourites of PSP as it is, and you can see sort of through threads to Patapon. Gravity Rush, PS Vita, as you've covered previously. Ico, so well loved, PS2 game. Bloodborne, well loved PS4 game. Legend of Dragoon, Astrobot. A well-loved PS5 game, and Gran Turismo. So you kind of just have a look at that list and just sort of think, you can see that in there, not on every single game, obviously, but this type of game, which I'll get into in a second, Patapon, it kind of seems to fit with their MO. You can see sort of certainly from a Loco Roco point of view, and I think also, Parappa the Rapper as well. That is, and so they're all kind of like games that it kind of sits in that wheelhouse. Really, you can see where they've kind of gone. We're good at these type of games. let's make another.
Let's make
another one that we're
games.
good at, and stick it back on the PSP. So, they just do a really good job of, here's a game type, here's a variation, let rip. So it is a rhythm strategy game, Patapon. You are a deity to a tribe of sort of eyeball warriors, I want to call them. Eyeball warrior dudes. I don't really know that. And they're called Patapons. They can be commanded to move forward, attack, defend, or retreat. Basically using a sequence of drum beats. So you control the drum beats effectively. The story is a bit weird, if I'm going to be honest. Are they like religious zealots? I feel like Patapon are a bit crazy.
Are you the bad guys?
Yeah. They're very culty. Like, as in, you don't really get a choice if you're their god or not. Like, I mean, obviously I picked up the game, but then I was a bit like, oh. Is this the side of the fence I'm sitting on? Like, I don't know. But I am. And basically, they've got a really specific goal to get to the basic journey to the end of the earth, effectively, or the end of the world, to gaze upon it.
Cool.
It being when you get to the end of the game, you find out what it is. That's which just sounds really kind of Christianity sort of is like light, maybe. I don't know. Like, it's a bit weird. But they have to take out giant beasts on the way, and also another tribe called the Zigatons, which quite like the Zootons. And again, not saying I was on the Zigaton side or anything, but you do get to, when you get towards the end of the game, you start to see it coalesce into sort of a, we're not so different, you and I, situation, right, which is quite nice. So, right at the start, quite a funny sort of note for me was that you sign a holy pact with.
That's usually a red flag.
Yeah, yeah. I should have realised.
Yeah,
with the Patapon, but it's cool because it does sort of ask for your signature, so I imagine if this was on 3DS you would have actually signed it, whereas on this, on PSP, you just press a button and it's like, oh yeah, you signed it to be our god now, thanks. I guess I want to split it into two parts, this game, part rhythm, part strategy, and I think that the strategy part of it is excellent. I've got a few problems with the rhythm sort of part of it. Now, not the song, and not actually being not enjoying the rhythm of life of this game, like Patapon. It does. There's some great songs, and it really is, and the fact it's driven by you being the drum beat, that is to make that happen. It's really great that you get to feel a part of that. Mm-hmm. That is without you doing the inputs correctly, it sounds shit. So, if you do it well, you have a good time. So I was a bit worried at the start that I was going to find this a bit obscure, and I didn't realise that when I first came to it, I expected just a pure rhythm game, whereas the amount of strategy in this that is in almost tantamount to sort of an RPG light, if you will, almost, bear with me here, a bit like Metal Gear Solid Patapon Walker, no, stick with me here,
right? I'll try.
Yeah, you effectively have a home base that you control your troops from. And that's about it, really. Right. But I just want to
apart from that,
I just kind of want to get the Peace Walker thing in there. But
you started with the joke and worked backwards.
Yeah, I did. I really did. Yeah. So you do have sort of a home base where you prepare your troops for whatever mission it is next. So the missions start off with sort of light missions where you kind of go, we're going to go hunting now, and you take your tribe out on a plane, and if you hunt these weird looking animals, like these lovely sort of silhouette looking animals, and it's quite clever really as well, because there's a variation in the animals as well. Some of them kind of just sit there and let you hunt them. Some of them actually, if you are getting too close to them, they'll start running away. So as you drive your Patapon backward or forward using the drum beats, then and you've got a little chap called, I think it's Patapon, and he basically, wherever he is, he's kind of like the chief religious zealot. He really believes in you, and wherever he stood with his signal, as in he or signia even, sorry, I guess the rest of your sort of tribe kind of coalesce around that, really. So you can move him forward or backwards. If you get too close to an animal, for example, when you're hunting them, then you can drive them away, but you can kind of control where Patapon stands. Your tribe, you start off with sort of, people, generic warriors that kind of, like have swords, basically. But then you build them up into having people that can use bow and arrow, throw spears. You get a sort of, I guess, warriors that are better at defending and things. It really is like you have to think about this quite significantly as you progress through the game. To start off with, not so much, but certainly later on, when you build up your tribe and who you're going to take out to battle with you. It's crazy that I just thought I didn't have that in my head because I knew not much about the game. I was just like, it's just going to be like, I'm going to like beat a drum and it's going to sound lovely and stuff. And actually,
start on left, go to right, things on the way.
Yeah, and it was just like, no, you have to actually think about this. I was like, and I think that might be maybe I kind of didn't expect it to be the same as Loco Roco, but I kind of expected that's much more. I guess really sort of that beginner's learning curve of you do the tilting sort of mechanism there, and that feels a bit more floaty light and fun, and whereas this is kind of like almost feels like a little bit of a serious sort of theme and a little bit of a sort of serious way of playing a game as well. I really appreciated that. The problem I kind of had with the rhythm part of it was almost that when you play your drum beat, if you do it correctly 10 times in a row, you hit this thing called fever point, and it feels like the fever point is really important to progressing in the game. Well, I say feels like, it definitely is. Right. And I was terrible at maintaining it because the rhythm changes. So as you press your drum beat, so the most basic ones like Patapatapatapon, Patapatapatapon. Yeah, you can see it's already getting to you now. Yeah, so, and then you'll do that, and then you kind of, as you get through your sort of 10 beats, you get towards sort of 7 or 8, you can kind of hear the Patapon get a little bit excited, like Patapatapatapon. And then you get to the 10th beat, and then it'll, rather than kind of carry on and you being able to kind of maintain that fever, they suddenly scream out of nowhere and go, Patapon! Or something like that. And then that kind of knocks me off. It's really distracting, because then it feels like the speed of the beat changes just at that point there. And if you don't maintain it, it starts again from scratch. And it was really frustrating. And I thought, is it just me? Like one of these, is it just me moments? Yeah. So I looked it up, and there are blogs that are 18 or 19 years old, or whatever it is now. That is less than that now, but that many years old. And actually, there's quite a lot of people out there saying how hard it is to maintain fever moment as well. So I was like, oh God, that is in... It wasn't a game breaker per se, but it was really annoying to me that I felt like I was good enough to be able to get up to 10 quite frequently, but there's no parachute moment of, we'll help you out to maintain fever mode. It's like if you just lose it, you lose it. And I was like, and the mini games are the same as well. So back in your Peace Walker base, if you will, you can play mini games as well that you kind of earn different things to help out your tribe in battle. So you go to, like, initially the first mini game, you go to a tree, and one of the Patapons there, and he says, do this special mini game, and it's like, so basically it's just like a bit of a more of a jazzy, dancey rhythm sort of thing, and that's where I really felt like I was missing the manual. I felt like at that point I was missing something, like, right. I wasn't. It was almost like it is upon me to be good at playing a rhythm game. I get that, but I didn't really it was like a bit of a sort of discotheque sort of like vibe music, this trees dancing. It's like, make me shake my leaves or stuff like that in the time, which is really fun, but like also really annoying when you can't do it. And it's like meant to be the first mini game. And I was like, so it took me ages to like master the first mini game, and it wasn't worth shit to me. It was like the thing I got from it was not really worth doing that. And it was just, I just felt like there was a real disconnect with how they almost felt like the fun part, which felt like the rhythm part of it, was kind of being sort of, I guess, blocked off by the strategy part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it was a bit annoying to me, but generally, I had a good time. Sort of, I guess I had a better time learning the mechanics of the strategy part of the game. That definitely seemed more interesting to me, and I felt like it was almost like could have been. Could I play Patapon without the rhythm part of it, sort of somehow? Like, could you take that away and kind of have this sort of like little tribe you're carrying around, and then obviously I came down and thought, well, actually, no, that'd be fucking stupid, but but it would have been good. The story is propelled forward at a good pace. You're never really sort of thinking, this, like, I think there's like 25, I think it's like 30 levels. I'm going to be honest, I got to about like 25 levels and I was like, and I kind of just ran out of time, to be honest, for the podcast, video game piss asses. And it was just like, but even then, I never really felt like I was sort of getting bored of it. Even with the difficulties I was having with the rhythm part of it, I was almost like, the story was really intriguing of these crazy religious nuts from either sort of side of this battle. It was really, really cool. And I never really felt like I was going to get to a point where I was sick of it either. Like, even with those little niggles, which is, always a sign of a good game for me. Does it draw a little bit of a sort of similarity with Lemmings as well? As like I was thinking, so from not definitely way more difficult for me personally, that until you get to the super hard Lemming levels, if you will. But just having these sort of like small characters progress across the screen while you're this kind of giant deity effectively opening a door or making them build bricks and things and stuff. It definitely felt like it owed quite a bit to Lemmings, if you will. The last thing I want to kind of hit on was just how visually brilliant it was and how much like actual detail there is in the game. Little things like, as you look at it, it is quite beautiful, really, even for a game back from 2007/2008 that uses effectively silhouettes. But I kind of had those, and I guess it is meant to make you feel this way, but it was really quite evocative, or almost like cave paintings and things, and it felt like they did such a good job of just nailing this vibe of, I can just close my eyes and I feel like I sort of see like a red sandstone brick and someone's hand drawn this sort of like these little Patapon that look a bit kind of like Unknown from Pokemon. That kind of sort of that thing though, you kind of think, you can just see it happening, like they're just brilliant. And little details such as, for example, if a Patapon falls in battle, you can collect I can't remember, it's like sort of like a little memory of them, and then you can, if you go back through some missions to go hunting for animals to get, like an animal hide or animal meat, then you can use that as sort of a currency to bring back your best warriors back to life at a life tree. Okay. It really thought about all these things so well. So the vast amount of detail in the game was just impressive as well. I don't know why I fall down on this though. Like this is one of these games I think objectively it's really very good. For me personally, I didn't enjoy it as much as I think as a lot of other people did. I don't think it's a bad game. That's not what I mean by that. It didn't click with me as well as I think it probably, and it clicked with me in the strategy part of it, which I didn't even know existed as much as it did, rather than the part that I thought was going to, which is the rhythm sort of part of it. Yeah. That was just a sort of an interesting feeling to come away from, where I was like, I've played quite a significant amount of this game, and I have enjoyed myself to an extent, and I really respect it as a game. Really respect it, but I just didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to as well, from what I've seen previously of reviews and stuff. So I kind of, for the first time ever, didn't really have a number in mind, and I kind of want a bit of a free play fortnightly pass here. Right. I feel like I need a bit of help with this score. Okay. Because I think I would be... I think I'd be probably a bit too subjective in my scoring and probably not putting it where it should be. But I don't know.
Well, I mean, I've never once done it objectively. So,
there's your help then.
And I've never made any bones about it, because ultimately, like, being objective with it is one thing, but we're sat in a spare room talking into a phone. Yeah, like, there's no point pretending to be objective.
Video game piss artists.
Yeah, exactly. And
mild weathered.
So I would go with what your subjective score would be.
Okay.
And yeah,
right. Okay then. So my gut feeling for me is a 7 out of 10.
Right.
A 7 out of 10. Yeah.
On the spreadsheet it goes.
I think that's probably vastly underneath what most people think of the game. Or I mean, maybe it's changed. I don't know, but I think the rhythm part of it really, that fever thing, that really annoyed me. I was just like, just let me have 1 or 2 levels where I'm just really good at the fever thing. And I genuinely think that there wasn't much of the game is the tutorial, the sort of first level's a tutorial, and that's why I think maybe this is one of those games where if I'd maybe read the manual or had the manual at hand, then I mean I do have it on UMD. I think I might have it just as a loose UMD though from eBay maybe. So I never really had the manual to be able to. I mean I probably could. These are the things about these games though. The manuals now are actually just someone writing on game FAQs from fucking 15 years ago, and it's just it's like that really cool. Way they've just kind of like do the text to make the logo of
the ASCII art stuff. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's one of my favourite things about doing this podcast is going back and seeing these sort of like game FAQs, like walkthroughs, and those ASCII arts are really cool. But yeah, I don't want to make it sound like Patapon is a bad game.
No.
It's still got 7.
I was going to say 7 is not a bad score by any stretch.
I just didn't click with it as much as I thought I would, so there we go.
Cool.
Tear away.
Tearaway.
Tearaway.
Things. So, yeah, like you said, 2013. Media Molecule, so them lot what done Little Big Planet and Dreams and stuff. This is a little bit of a departure for them. A tiny little step away, kind of tiny departure. Like Dreams is obviously Dreams is a very creation heavy game, and they tried to make that a kind of ecosystem that you could share your creations and all that kind of stuff. Little Big Planet is a platformer with all of that creativity kind of shoved into it. Little Big Planet, he says again. Tearaway is more of a kind of 3D platformer type puzzle type game. That kind of goes a little bit lighter on the creation side of things. You occasionally get to create like a crown for a squirrel, or eyes, or mittens and stuff like that, and it's all papercraft. So the conceit of the game is the entire world is papercraft, and you are playing as this little messenger dude or dudette who is trying to deliver a message to the quote-unquote you. Patapon had an it. Tearaway has a you.
Yes.
The you is you in the sun. It is literally your face. It takes a picture of your face and puts it in the sun. I look like the sun from the Teletubbies after a really, really messy divorce. It was really bad. I looked fucking miserable as well in that. So every time this little cheery messenger in this little twee story is trying to get to the sun to deliver its exciting, lovely message, and there I am looking like a face like a slapped ass.
Did you get an opportunity to retake that photo, or was it like, no, this is you now?
Well, it's a live feed. So I just look miserable, and then I see me looking miserable. I'm like, that is kind of funny.
It was very when you sent me a photo of that, it was very Jack D. I thought that is the face.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Well, when you're slouched over on your sofa, staring down at your lap with this thing on. Incidentally, because it uses all of the gizmos that the Vita has, right? Front touchscreen, rear touchpad, cameras, and gyro, and all this kind of stuff. So the idea is that you're kind of holding this little papery world in your hands, but you can interact with it from basically any given direction.
Yeah.
So in that respect, kind of like Patapon, you are basically some kind of weird god. And so you'll have bits where it makes it look like you're shoving your fingers through this paper world from underneath to move platforms or make things go up in the air or knock enemies over and stuff like that. But it does also mean that on the main menu, you kind of have a little sort of picture-in-picture type thing where it makes it look like the menu options are an overlay for what is happening on the other side of the Vita, which, if you're out and about and are holding the Vita up at eye level, I guess, could be kind of interesting. But if you're sat on your sofa, most of your main menus are going to be of your own knees or your crotch, which simultaneously feels like it's somehow making a mockery of what they set out to do, but at the same time is kind of fun.
Oh, my balls!
There's something weirdly endearing about the game, right? Is what I'm getting at. Like, I know I usually gob on about the touchscreen this and tiny nubbin that, and that is not a nickname for me. But like, it's one of those things where it all coalesces and comes together so well in this game. They bring it all together so nicely, and they go out of their way to design the playing around those things, and not in a kind of Frobisher says throwaway, frivolous kind of thing. Like, they are meaningful interactions with the world for this little creature that you're trying to like get from A to B. And it makes a big difference, I think. Like, to have the story and the world so tied up in what it's doing, it makes a big difference. To the extent that, like, some of the mushrooms that you'll walk past are mimicking the left stick movement.
Oh, really?
And little details like that really go a long way to selling it to you. And so, like, this feels like that kind of Vita tech demo. This is what you show people where it's like, oh, hey, do you want to see what this thing can do? Yeah. Because it looks great as well.
Here's the actual killer
app. The actual killer app, the tech demo, all that good stuff. And I would argue, and again, this is another point we touch on a lot, is how much of the Vita library made the jump to, say, PS4 or what have you, and it doesn't really feel exclusive, or it somehow devalues the Vita version. I don't think that's the case with this, because yes, you've got Tearaway unfolded on the PS4, but because of how it's set up, you kind of can't, by default, have all the cool camera stuff. Yeah. If you've got the camera hooked up to it, sure, I think you can use it, but they had to come up with a load of other ways to let you interact with the world. So, you can get items thrown, quote unquote, into your controller and then use the touchpad to flick them back out and fire them. Yeah. Which you don't even have a level like that does things like that on the Vita version. So the PS4 and the Vita versions feel to me more like companion pieces rather than a remake or a remaster or anything like that. Yeah. And so I think that, like, taking them together, I could absolutely see why they would make someone like IGN's list of PlayStation games that, are particularly noteworthy, because there's something fun to all that.
Well, it's just like you don't. It sounds like you don't really have an equatable experience that is like anything else. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, like, not that many certainly that have done it as well and made the Vita sing like that with all its gizmos, and also, making it so immersive. Yeah. So it does deserve, like, its place in the sun, ironically. I think more than you.
I really, I really do think it does, because, like, even the version of Little Big Planet that was on the PS Vita somehow felt like a slightly watered down version of, like, the PS3 game and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Tearaway, you can tell they went in with the console in mind, and it makes such a difference. And I mean, I've got in my notes that it kind of feels like it's a Sony console almost at its most Nintendo-ish, and that is definitely a compliment as far as I'm concerned. Like, there's a lot of ingenuity and creativity and inventive little moments in it that, like, you're sitting there. It's not a particularly long game, but there's enough variety and enough new bits that you kind of play to the next bit, and you're kind of curious to see what new spin it's going to put on things, or what little wrinkle it's going to add, and all that kind of stuff. It's really, really engaging, I think. And you can go through, and there's collectibles in the form of, like, papercraft creatures that you can find and stuff like that, which you can go onto, I think it's like tearaway.me or something like that, and you can download them, and that's still live. You can still go and do that. Okay. So the fact that you can also still engage with it, like, in real life, 11 years later plus, I think is a big deal. Like, it should be celebrated.
You look at that comparative to Media Molecule's Little Big Planet and their servers not being live anymore. Like, do you know what I mean? It just feels like there's so many people out there that still want this kind of those. There's no, for me, there's, apart from the fact that it's obviously a cost to keep them live, like, there's no reason why those shouldn't be live for games that you can adapt and do, I guess a certain amount of construction to yourself over a period of time. It's annoying if they're not still there because, and I know we spoke about this before on the Little Big Planet podcast, but it's just to not have part of the game accessible anymore that is a big chunk of it. Like for Little Big Planet, it's a massive thing. Whereas here, like you said, it's not as much necessarily, but it's great. But it doesn't matter because it's still live. So you've still got the complete game that you can play 11 years later.
Well, that's the thing, because it's a website. It's completely separate. Yeah. So it kind of doesn't matter if it's there or not. It's just good to know that it is. Yeah. Whereas with Little Big Planet, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Like it's like cutting its legs away from underneath it. Whereas Tearaway, you haven't paid someone else for the privilege of creating stuff for their game. Like they have given you a game.
Yeah.
The best I can do is put eyes on everything, which I did.
That just reminded me, both my little boys yesterday. Like we got gifted a rock painting set that you put eyes on.
Oh, good.
Just running around the house today, just like these fucking googly eyed rocks just in my face. Dad, look! And I'm like, and I just imagine you doing that to Fiona, probably.
It's not a million miles off, no. But I think there's something about that slight shift in emphasis away from, being one of those games where it's giving you the creation tools and not a hell of a lot else to something that actually feels more like a complete experience in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I mean, I played it back in the day, and I enjoyed it. I played the PS4 version a couple of years later, and enjoyed that. I don't remember actively hating it or anything like that. But I think, if anything, the last couple of years of doing this podcast and then going back and playing it now has kind of given me a new appreciation for what it's bringing to the party and the kind of place it has in the Vita library in 2024. And so I think I'll give it a 9 out of 10.
Oh, brilliant.
I think objectively, if you were doing it objectively, and you would probably say there's not a heck of a lot of replay value there potentially, and once you've seen it, and when the novelty wears off, but I think for how I see the games, how I see Vita library, and the way I approach games nowadays, I prefer condensed, shorter experiences much more now than I did when I played this originally. And so having a cute, bright, vibrant, inventive game that's 5 or 6 hours, blat through it, but feel like it's been a worthwhile experience, I think there's absolutely value in that. I'm going to stick that on the spreadsheet.
No, that's awesome. I mean, to be honest, I kind of thought that with the PS4 version, I was like, how does that work? Because it feels so inherently tied with the Vita's gizmos.
Yeah, well, they reinvented levels. They added in new bits. They cut levels out. They put in things where you'd have to pretend like the PS4 controller was shining a light into the game world and stuff like that. And that necessitated a load of changes to the levels and new bits added in. So they did do a lot of work to it. It's not quite sequel territory, if I remember rightly.
Okay.
But arguably kind of straddles a fine line between sequel and not. And I think that's why it makes a companion piece to this rather than anything else.
I was going to say, is there a world or way that the original game is on PlayStation Store, you could play on the console, that you could use the Vita as a pad? Is that something?
I'm not aware of it. I mean, it's... Say with the PlayStation TV, that would be the first way that came to mind of trying to do something like that. Yeah. But I don't know how that could work. Even if you hacked the PlayStation TV to run everything, you are still not going to have a rear touchpad on the controller you're using unless you've managed to concoct a way of having a Vita as your controller. And I think in that respect, that's kind of why I've added an extra point to what I think the score would be if I was doing it objectively. I think about an 8 out of 10 is the objective score. But for me, it earns that extra point just from that kind of inventiveness. And the fact that, as you just pointed out, I was playing it again, more recently, thinking, well, actually, how how could you
Yeah.
play this on anything else? And I don't think you realistically could.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, there'll be a modder out there that's managed to nail it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely, yeah.
For the vast majority of human beings, I think it's
Someone's
very
like
difficult.
made an entire like scale model out of actual paper in a room somewhere of Tearaway.
Oh, yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
this counts.
that'll be it.
This counts. So is that apart from which would be cheating because it's not true, but apart from Hotline Miami, which we gave a 10 this year, is that as a pure Vita game that's been played on the Vita by yourself, that might be like the highest score maybe for a Vita game?
I think it might be, yeah. I think...
Does that sound right?
Yeah,
to you out loud?
I think it
does.
does.
To me, from what you're saying.
Yeah, like, the other one that...
Persona 4 Golden. Again, that was on that. That was on that.
Killzone Mercenary is the other one that comes to mind as like, I don't really think I can play that anywhere else. I gave that an 8 out of 10. But yeah, beyond that, like there are other ones that you can play in other ways, other places. But I think with the benefit of a bit of hindsight, I think Tearaway, like original Tearaway on the Vita, has definitely taken on maybe like a slightly different vibe, place, meaning. I don't know, but that I think I get it now. I think I see what they were going for.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
It just on that, like you say, on that Persona 4 Golden, that was quite high up in that IGN list. Actually, I think it was like
it's
top
a hell
20.
of a game. Yeah,
and you know, like to have a Vita game up there, which considering how many people weren't necessarily in love with it and stuff. How do you feel about number 1, Metal Gear Solid? I mean, like, I know you said you haven't looked at all of them, but that is in, you know, like, just, and Metal Gear Solid 4 didn't get in the list, and I think all the other Metal Gears did, I think, in some...
Oh, so they did them separately? And
yeah, did them separately, yeah, and I think Metal Gear 4 didn't get in there. This turned to Metal Gear Pod now. Patapon Walker, once more. MGS Patapon Walker. I just thought I thought I'd get your steer on it while it was still fresh in the news that, you know, do you think...
This was like every PlayStation...
So every PlayStation,
every generation
PlayStation.
Yeah.
So basically since PlayStation been in Metal Gear Solid, because everyone seemed quite firmly happy that was number 1, and you know, speaking out loud, everyone knows how much of an absolute stone cold classic Metal Gear Solid is.
Yeah.
Is it still? Is it the best game ever made on a PlayStation?
Not for me, no.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's good. It's very good, and it's definitely because when I was a kid, it was my sister's PlayStation.
Oh yeah, you said, yeah.
So you know, I owned a couple of games for it, and one of them was Metal Gear Solid. So you know, it's definitely got a special place for me. But I mean, I didn't own a PlayStation of my own until PS3, and even then, I had already owned an Xbox 360 for ages, and then traded it in because I got bored of it, basically. A lot of my friends have PS2s, so, you know, a lot of fun memories tied up in that era. And the GameCube era was, you know, we were playing 4-player games and stuff like that. Long story short, were I to pick my personal favourite PlayStation game, it would probably be from a later generation or Symphony of the Night. I think, for me personally.
Yeah, that was... I think, I'm fairly certain that was on there. I'm fairly certain it was.
Bloody well should have been.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it was. Yeah. Don't worry. I'm just trying to remember where it was, though, is my thought process.
I mean, my thing with Symphony of the Night, since I reviewed it and we talked about it and stuff like that, you know, I do occasionally catch myself thinking, like, oh, is this actually my favourite game of all time now?
Yeah.
Like, that is the level we are talking in my kind of personal pantheon.
I fucking love that game.
Like, but it is genuinely, like, if somebody sat me down and said, right, you got 10 seconds, name your favourite game of all time, that is going to be one of the first names that comes to mind.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's like mine sort of started to distill into Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, and I think that was like 38 on the list or something like that. It was quite, you know, it was, and I was like, I'm quite comfortable with that, where that is, and also where it feels to me. And that isn't, because you get that subjective thing, don't you? But just a quick point is that I've realised that I have an absolute ton of PlayStation 2 games at home, and I have a PlayStation 2, and I very rarely turn to it for the podcast, even though it's the best-selling console of all time, and it has a massive back catalogue. But I never find myself... And I wonder if I just played so much of it when I was younger that I never really kind of go back. I tend to kind of pick PS3, PS1, PSP, obviously. I kind of pick around the PS2. I don't know why. I'm telling you, you need to tell me why. But, you know,
I
it's
could
just...
hazard a guess.
Yeah.
I would have said that a lot of PS2 games have ended up in other places.
Yeah, probably.
I would imagine there's been quite a few that have been ported and stuff like that have ended up in other places. Don't get me wrong, like for what we've got planned in January, I'm going to be breaking mine out, no spoilers. So, you know, like...
Hear it creaking into action.
Yeah, well, genuinely, I'm running out of controllers for it. They keep fucking breaking. So...
I think I have one.
Yeah, I'm going to need to... I think I've got one. I'm down to one. Or I've got one that there's like one of those rubbish third-party ones. I don't know if I've still got it knocking around somewhere, but you'd plug it in and it would just vibrate constantly. Like, constantly. You couldn't turn it off.
Someone's definitely programmed that. Like,
well, you do have to wonder, don't you?
Right, cool. Well, thanks for listening, guys, and we will speak to you again next week.
Cheers.